Welcome back. Frankie Foster has exited stage right and David Yates has entered stage left, though I'm sure you barely noticed the difference. Here are this week's talking points, and we will start.
That was my joke.
Well, you know, you've got to have a good scriptwriter.
I was going to use that one.
Listen, Bob Monkhouse used to say that about Bob Hope all the time. Right. Let's start with a serious point, Dave, because we are now trying to unravel what's happened in the wake of the drugs raid in Monasterevan, which is over a week ago now. We talked about it extensively on last week's programme and have done since. But it's emerged because Jessica Harrington has told journalists that her yard has been gone over with a fine-tooth comb by not only the IHRB, but by the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. And you'd imagine that's being played out across Ireland as we speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's the case that it's a joint venture, isn't it, between those two bodies now. And so, yes, the background on this, just to mention it once more, was it a week last Tuesday that it was the raid on, was it the Ballintoa Stud in Monasterevan with the Gardaí, the DAFM, Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine, and the IHRB. They took some samples from the horses who were there. The fallout from it, of course, there was a really interesting piece by Paul Kimmage in the Irish Independent last Sunday, in which several trainers were telephoned by a private investigator asking about their relationship with John Warwick, who's the practitioner who was using the stud for a clinic during visits. And Jessica Harrington was one of those, of whom it was asked, do you know this man? Well, we have a picture of one of your horse boxes on the premises. And so it's no massive surprise that the stable was visited by DAFM and by the IHRB together for testing on the horses. I think that sometimes in journalism one would present this as a story and say Jessica Harrington has been visited. Well, if you turn it on its head and said, well, the stables who had either boxes that were pictured on the premises or actually were there at the time of the raid a week last Tuesday, if they didn't receive a visit, it would be very, very strange.
Yeah, as Jessica Harrington herself has said.
Jessica Harrington said, I don't mind them being there. I think it's incumbent on everybody in this case to welcome the testers and thereby show that their operation is clean.
Just before we move on, because this is an important topic, but nothing much has happened in the last few days, it sounds as though we're not expecting an awful lot to happen any time soon.
Well, that seems to be the case, doesn't it? I think that whatever the IHRB want to happen and whatever speed they want to proceed at, which is probably not that fast, I suspect that they will have to play by the rules of the department, and I suspect that they will want to play it very slowly, but that's how they will do it. And I suspect that also applies to the tests that were taken on site. Of course, Ted Walsh said he was in the wrong place at the wrong time. That was on RTE a week yesterday, or at least on the website. And so in the normal course of events, we might expect the regulator to release the results of tests taken, were it the IHRB or the BHA. But in this case, I think as the junior partner, they will play by the rules of the senior one.
Let's talk about Dan Skelton, who reached his 1,000th winner this week, and he's barely been able to keep out of the news for the last 3 or 4 weeks. Dave.
Yeah, it's an indication, that, isn't it, of the progress that the yard has made. I mean, he learnt his trade at the feet of the master, didn't he, Paul Nicholls? And it's been said for years and years. Dan Skelton took out a licence in 2013. The similarities between the two characters are obvious and very striking, aren't they? And it was interesting that, interviewed at Ascot after Favoir's victory on Friday, that he recounted his conversation with Paul Nicholls after he had reached 1,000 winners, which was with a bumper at Folkestone, and Paul Nicholls said, well, don't worry about that, we're on to the next 1,000, which is exactly what you would imagine Paul Nicholls to say. And Dan Skelton said, that goes for me too. But to go with 1,000, latterly there's been a lot of quality as well, hasn't there? The likes of All Mankind, Roxana, Shan Blue, obviously My Drogo 2, and Protectorate. So it's Nicholls said last year that it's only a matter of time before Dan Skelton hunts him down, and I suspect that it'll be a couple or a few years yet, but he's clearly getting there, isn't he?
He is getting there. The other thing I'd noted, Nicky Henderson said that these younger trainers are just doing different things. I mean, Dan Skelton, for example, is now starting to breed his own horses.
Yeah.
It stands Nubia Negra's side, Dink at his wife Grace's stud, and they've got a significant crop of young stock that they're producing themselves, foals, yearlings, and...
I would like to have seen a photograph at Ascot with Dan Skelton's wife and that 1,000th winner. Headline Grace and Favois.
Oh, that's good. Wasn't quite sure where we were headed there, but it was worth the wait. Our Luck on Sunday sometime colleague Lee Mottershead, who occasionally occupies that chair, wrote a very good piece, senior writer in the Racing Post, or a thought-provoking piece on Monday about Cheltenham and the Jockey Club's relationship with hunting, as evidenced by Friday's Countryside Day at the racecourse, and whether proceeds A should go to the Countryside Alliance, and B whether there should be a parade of horses and hounds on the day, Dave.
Yeah, and also Lee addressed the decision, the editorial decision of ITV not to show the horses and the hounds
at the request of Cheltenham.
Yeah, and I think that's the right move, personally. I suspect
by ITV or by Cheltenham requesting ITV not to show it, because there's a subtle difference.
Yeah.
It's not ITV's decision.
No,
it was Cheltenham's decision to ask ITV not to show something that Cheltenham themselves had decided to put on, which is odd.
I think that is strange. You would have expected the broadcaster to say, right, we've decided not to show this. It's a strange thing that that the request should come from Cheltenham, who are happy to show that, and the parade takes place in front of racegoers that are there, but doesn't... I agree with you. I think that there is an incongruity, if that's the right word, in that. Broadly, I think it would have been the right decision for the broadcaster to make. Not that... personally, if I started the world again, I would not include... It would not include fox hunting, but... It's not something about which I have a particularly strong view. You know, I grew up, I've spent my whole life in an urban environment, and so I don't suppose people will be massively surprised by my saying that. With regard to the link between hunting and racing, I think, I
suppose that's the key, isn't it? Is this a link that racing should try to break? That is, I think, at the core of this, isn't it?
Sitting on the fence, really. I don't think it's necessarily a link that we should try to break. It's a link that I don't think one really can break. Personally, when they took, fox hunters out of and called the Cheltenham race is now called the Hunter Chase, isn't it? They took out fox hunter. I just thought, well, that doesn't offend me. The fact that there's the word fox in the race title. With regard to advertising it, well, no, I wouldn't, because if you are after getting younger people, particularly those, if you're trying to tap into a market such as young people in urban environments, then advertising your link with fox, Tony Blair won a landslide in 1997, and one of the cutest things he did was tell sixth formers who were voting for the first time that he was going to get rid of fox hunting.
I imagine he was losing a lot of sleep about hunting at the time, personally.
It was an electoral trick, of course it was, but it worked.
Do you want to know my view on this?
Yeah, I do, because of course I do.
Well, here's the deal. Lee made the very good point in his piece that if you're giving part of your gate proceeds to the Countryside Alliance, you're giving gate money to a political and lobbying organisation whose recent history has been somewhat contentious. And I think, yeah, as a racecourse group, I think you are in you're in sort of dangerous territory there. And so I do accept that maybe that shouldn't be part of it. On the other hand, the way that hunting is played out now, i.e. not fox hunting, not hunting foxes, but organised hunts with hounds, pursuing what is an entirely legal activity. I realise there have been breaches of that law, but it is an entirely legal activity. As things stand, it is an integral part of the fabric of the British countryside still, and as is national hunt racing.
Yeah.
And Cheltenham is very much the mecca of that. You only have to see the people who go to Cheltenham to realise that. If there is one day in Cheltenham's year where legitimate and legal, lawful country pursuits are showcased, then I think if you're saying that can't then be shown on the national broadcaster, what is the point of having the day at all?
Yeah, but that with the request coming from Cheltenham. Yeah, I'm not unsympathetic. The fact that there have been well-reported breaches over the years is not the fault of the law, is it? The law as it stands, we could pin out, we could bring out any activity for which the law is sound if it's obeyed, and then say, oh well, what about this? And that doesn't stand up, does it? But yeah, I don't disagree with what you said. As I say, I think looking at it more broadly, if racing is looking to get a broader and a younger and an urban customer base, then its association with hunting, I don't think even people who want to bring back fox hunting with hounds, I think that
that's
they
never
would
going
find.
to happen.
No, but the point I was going to make was that even those people would find it difficult to argue with what I've just said.
OK, well, it's extraordinary, isn't it? As indeed it did in the 1997 election, and sort of every year subsequently. This subject is taking up a disproportionate amount of airtime, which seems to be the case forever. Right, Brian Hughes, he's flying. He's at the top of the Jockeys table, and he's going to win the Jockeys Championship. Simple as that, Dave.
Yes, I think it probably is, unless he has an injury that were to rule him out for a lengthy period of time. He's now on 99 winners for the campaign. As you say, he's flying. There was a treble at Catterick, was it Thursday or Friday? And obviously another winner at Haydock yesterday with Barrichello. He's on the 99 winner mark for the season. And I'm looking at the table now, which I've written down. Sam Twiston-Davies 57, Sean Bowen 53, Paddy Brennan doing brilliantly on 52, and Harry Skelton, the reigning title holder, on 41. So by my maths, 42 plus lead that Brian Hughes enjoys at the moment tells you that, barring accidents, he's going to get his crown back. So in April.
Here's a question for you. We all get our knickers in a twist about how the Jockeys Championship on the flat should be run and where the staging post should be, and how merit is best judged. The jump racing, for 16 or 17 of the last 20 championships, it's been won by the end of August, beginning of September. So isn't that actually about the least stimulating championship you can possibly have? Like, whoever's bothered to get out there and ride a ton of winners in the summer. No disrespect to Brian Hughes, who I think is brilliant.
Yeah, agreed. Yes, well, like you say, the flags that are now in place on the flat season. Yeah, maybe they should think about that in terms of the jumps, the National Hunt Jockeys title. I suppose basically you would just start it later, wouldn't you? You'd start it. The showcase meeting. Cue howls of derision from all and sundry. Yeah, there were howls. There still are howls of derision in certain places about the flat jockeys title, aren't there? This year it was exciting, but there are lots of people who like the idea that it should run from March to November. The one thing I would add, and I realise we're running way over time, is that
now the Donald McCain stable is starting to get back to where it was, it's highly possible, and I really hope this happens, that McCain Hughes becomes a force at the major fixtures and in the major races, because then we'll be able to see this ridiculously talented guy showcases stuff on the biggest stage where he should be doing it.
Well, the stable is on its way back in terms of
big time
numbers and quality, isn't it? So if that curve continues, then that's what's going to happen.
Let's talk about a man who has been champion jockey, but it's not been the focus of his life for a long time, Frankie Dettori. His film premiered earlier this week, subtitled Show Me How Good You Are, and I think he did show us how good he was in this very raw and candid documentary, which has been brilliantly made.
It's very easy to forget, isn't it, given Dettori's success over the last few years with John Gosden, where he's found that pretty much perfect work-life balance, hasn't he? Whereby he doesn't take hundreds of rides every season, but he still partners lots of Group 1 winners. It's easy to forget the ups and downs that career has had, isn't it? Particularly in 2012, where there was the cocaine ban, there was the instance where for the Derby meeting, he was riding at Haydock on the Saturday. Our most celebrated flat race was missing our most celebrated jockey. It's easy to forget those troubled times. What this shows us, and it's something that we say in the press room to each other all the time, and that is, we will weep bitter tears when Dettori says, who is 51 next month, we will weep bitter tears when he says, right, that's it, I've had enough. Because whether it's the highs or the lows, he has been consistently box office. There have been attempts over the last couple of years maybe to have a Prince Regent as regards Dettori, and someone who can take that mantle when he finally does retire. Nobody ever will. No one will come close. There are lots of things in horse racing currently, and principally I think the relatively small number of stables who contest the big prizes, I think that works to the sport's detriment. But we have been blessed to live and work in an age that has Dettori in it.
When Gosden says in the film, he's the finest jockey I've ever legged up on a horse, and you think, yeah, and you were regularly putting up Piggott, Shoemaker, Pink Eye, McCarran, Delahousse, and all the others, Fallon, Cawthon.
Absolutely. And the other thing that you can say is that at 50, when that old racing media cliche about someone riding as well as ever, well, physiologically, whether that's possible, I don't know. But he's certainly not far away from it, is he?
Let's talk about when a horse is under starter's orders in relation to Nicky Henderson's comments about Cascova at Ascot, who was lining up in a small field novice chase, didn't jump off, was declared a runner, and therefore you've done your money. Now, this has been going as long as I've been watching racing, Dave, this debate.
Yeah, it has. The race title was the Windsor Horse Rangers Limited Novices Handicap Chase, and we almost needed something of the sponsor's product, didn't we, at the start here? Horse Rangers. I think that in this case, I mean, I've watched this particular non-starting several times, and there's absolutely no doubt in this case that Cascova is being led in, has every opportunity to join the two horses that are in opposition, and he just chooses not to do so. Now, I take on board Nicky Henderson's point, and this one was there could have been a couple of other talking points added as a result of your interview earlier, but this one, the trainer's view is that, well, if he doesn't cross the starting line, how can be deemed as a starter? And I think the answer to that is that if you have an opportunity to start and you don't, then you are deemed as a starter.
Yeah,
and I think that's the right thing.
I think if a horse is miles away from the tape and has shown zero inclination of starting, and the starter can have made the call beforehand to say, take that horse away, I'm not interested, that's fine, then obviously it's not come under orders. If it is lined up on the tapes go back and it just stands stock still, I think it has to be a runner.
Yeah, I do. There's the mathematical reality of this, of course, is that on Friday you backed a 4-to-1 shot who decided not to start, and you didn't get a run for your money. If you backed Favois, of course, then you didn't get a Rule 4 when you went to collect. So obviously, that mathematically there are swings and roundabouts wherever you stand.
What an amazing career the stallion Pivotal has had, not just as a sire, but as a broodmare sire of significant influence. He died this week at the age of 28 at Cheveley Park Stud, where he had covered mares so successfully for so long. His initial covering fee was £6,000. It dropped to £3,000 after that, before steepling north of six figures. A remarkable animal himself, whose victory in the Nunthorpe over Evening Performance was his crowning glory. Few would have been able to guess the impact he could have made as a stallion.
Absolutely. This was the last of Pivotal's 6 starts, trained, of course, by Sir Mark Prescott and running in the Cheveley Park Stud Silks, for whom he stood. He retired in 2020 at the end of the covering season, and his death was reported at the age of 28 on Friday. There's George Duffield. As you say, it's sort of he covered every base. I don't mean covered. You see what I mean? Kilaki, Sariska, African Story, Far, Glen Shiel, Adabe, Siuni, who now, of course, is a successful stallion himself. As you say, sire of broodmares. He sired the dams of Tenebrism, Love, Cracksman, Magical. An absolutely extraordinary career at studs. A son of Polar Falcon, as you say, whose fee dropped to 3,000. And I think it's when we talk about, I always think that when we talk about horses' racecourse careers and races that make stallions, what makes a horse's stallion career is his performance at stud, isn't it? In that going into it, you can run in whatever races you like. Pivotal was living proof that you can start with not from humble beginnings. He was a Group 1 winner,
but he was upgrading really ordinary mares and getting Group 1 winners out of them.
But and once he started doing that, as you say, the fee went from 3,000 up through into six figures, simply because he was a huge success at what he did.
A loss for sure, but a great life and an extraordinary legacy. Pivotal, who died this week at the age of 28. And those were this week's Talking Points. Subscribe to Racing TV to be notified when more Luck on Sunday videos are appearing online. And don't forget to join me for the show every Sunday morning from 9 o'clock with the best guests.